A super warm welcome to you, all of our listening audience, all of our watching audience. Thank you so much for investing in yourself. Every week we come on Simply Sarah, knowing that we are gifting an energetic toolbox and that you are the recipients of this. And as you are going through this process of listening and watching, that you are learning tools and things that can be helpful for you today, now, immediately applicable, and things that maybe you might store away for the future. And some of these ideas are going to be concepts that you perhaps have heard before, but the idea of coming back with them with a fresh look is so important. Today, we're going to have a conversation that might be a bit triggering for some people, so I just put that out there. However, if you have lived enough life, you have had people in your life that have transitioned, you have experienced loss yourself, and perhaps you have even felt at times very, very desperate and lonely in those spaces of loss. Today, we're going to be gifting you tools to be able to go through that process. And the person who's going to be sharing today with us is Sweet P. I am so delighted that she is here with us. Sweet P, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come and share your thoughts and your concepts with us. I'm just so pleased that you are here.
Thank you, Sarah. I like to say I'm very thankful to be here and to be able to share a very important message, but
Yes.
also a very traumatizing message.
But there is hope, right? You are here and you are here. You are a vision of hope for people who are going through things. And so I would just love for you, Sweet Pea, to share how you got to where you are today, friend.
Okay, wonderful. So, in order to get to where I am today, I have to kind of take you to the past. And in the past, when I was growing up, I did not live a very good childhood. I was severely abused from the time I was 2 years old, physically abused. And I had very neglectful parents. I was had to fend for myself to the point I even had to potty train myself, and I had to take care of myself from a very early age. And so that being abused and not having the guidance led me into drug abuse by the time I was 8 years old. My father was a drug dealer and he did not hide it from us kids at all. So we knew how to get it, where to get it, and how to use it because we watched. And then that led me into selling drugs by the time I was 12. And then, so I did not do good in school, and I had a lot of emotional problems due to that abuse. And because not only was it physical, it was also mental, a lot of mental.
Yes.
And so um, that led me into, I was living on the streets as a teenager
Mm-hmm.
and I was on drugs and I ended up getting pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, life is over now, you know. But I took that pregnancy to heart, and I uh, I didn't have anybody to help me, so I had to be fully responsible
Mm-hmm.
for that child now. And I was using drugs up to my 7th month in pregnancy, and I sat myself down and I said, you know, God, if she comes out healthy, I'll never touch a drug again. I will never ever. And sure enough, she was healthy, and that's what started some of my journey. Um, but as we know, as patterns go, um, my grandmother told me when I had kids that it was no longer about me, it
Mm-hmm.
was about the child.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it would have been very selfish and if I was to even think of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then I should add this too. I was also abandoned with the child. the
Mhm.
father did.
Yes.
And as patterns happen, I ended up getting pregnant at 19 and abandoned. And so at that time, I didn't really focus on my feelings or my traumas because now I had two kids, and that was enough to take up a lot of time. And then at the age of 22, I got pregnant again for the third time. But this time it was a charm because I got married to that child's father, and he ended up adopting my two children.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
And then now we're at three kids and a husband. So it's really not about me. And so I just worked through life. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because I was putting so many loads and so many pressures
Mhm.
on my body. And I'm sure everybody heard this saying. My grandmother would always tell me, you got to calm yourself down or you're going to get yourself a heart attack. And I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I wasn't, I was young. I was like, grandma, life happens, you got to keep pushing and you got to keep pushing and you got to keep pushing.
Mhm.
And so I became that super mom. I worked full time. I went to university full time. I took care of the house full time, the children full time, the bills. I had all these pressures and I never self cared.
Mhm.
Never got myself help for any of those traumas. And my body was like a ticking time bomb. And so, I'm trying to make this very long story short, but just the gist of it, I was in my last semester at the university, and I was getting my degree in criminal justice, and I decided to work at a halfway house
Mhm.
just to gain experience.
Sure.
And we had an inmate that died, and I didn't know how long he was dead, but I was the only one in the building that was CPR certified.
Mhm.
So I performed CPR, and all his body fluids came rushing out of his mouth into mine. I had no guard, no protection, no nothing
Yeah.
because I didn't know he was already dead for like 3 hours by the
Mhm.
time I performed that.
Mm.
So I finished out my shift and then I went home and the next morning I couldn't even get out of bed. I
Mm.
was so sick and I was like, what's wrong? And I had nothing. I had no energy to even go to the bathroom. I
Mhm.
was just so sick. And so kind of in the future now, what I have realized was that um, all those pressures and all those traumas were just building, kind of like if you think of one of those container ships,
Mhm.
the more
Mm.
containers you put on that ship, the more
Yes.
that ship sinks.
Mm.
And so giving him CPR, I believe, was the last straw that my body could take.
Mhm.
I just had a total blowout.
Mhm.
So, where do we go from there, right? So when we get ill, we go to doctors.
Mhm.
And that's what I thought. So started going to doctors, and then I started entering a whole nother world that I
Yes.
had no clue on. And the all the tests, everything were coming back negative. Nobody could find anything that was wrong with me. But at this point, I had no energy. I
Mm,
was in a lot of severe pain. I was having seizures. I was having massive headaches.
mm,
I couldn't even function.
mm.
And I did not know if I was even going to live or die.
Yeah,
There were there would be times that I at night I would just roll over and look at my husband and say, I don't know if I'm going to make it in the morning. I just want you to know that I love you,
yeah.
and if anything happens, I love you.
Mhm,
And so I entered the medical world, and I became abused once again.
mm,
You know, the doctors were telling me it's all in your head. You're making this up. You just want pain medication because you're an addict.
mm,
Um, and or they chalk it up to if you have anxiety, that's what it's all chalked up to. And uh, it took them over 5 years to finally figure out what was going on. So what happened was I had jaw surgery done when I was 20. They took off my upper jaw and
mhm,
had to rewire it and everything. So I had a lot of metal in my face. So
mm.
in CPR, the infections were sticking to the metal in my face.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I got a fluke MRI done for the headaches, and they finally found that I had a birth defect that I didn't realize I had, which is called a Chiari malformation, which means my brain is too big for my skull. So my brain was in my spinal canal, and
Ah,
that's what was causing the seizures and
you bet it.
everything.
Sweet Pea,
Hmm.
we're just going to take a quick break right here for a commercial, but when we come back, I'm looking forward to you sharing what happened next. I love the company Field Trip. They are in Newburgh, New York, and I order from them frequently. I'm so excited that they have joined us in partnership, and so excited to be sharing their information with you. As we're having this conversation with Sweet Pea, she's sharing about not having people around her who are supporting her from a very, very young age. And then she's talking about how she has gotten really, really sick in her 20s. She has 3 children that she's helping to raise that are hers. And with the help of her husband, she's going to school full time. She's paying the bills. She's taking care of the kids. So much intensity. And the point that really got my attention in this first section was her talking about not practicing self-care. And that's one of the biggest tools in the toolbox is us putting time onto the calendar for ourselves. And sometimes it's just a little bit of time. Sometimes we have the beauty of more time than that. But as we bring her back in, I'm so curious, Sweet Pea, what happened next in your story?
So, so the sickness caused me to spend 15 years in bed.
Yes.
I in and out of
That,
surgeries, poked,
that's a
prodded,
lot.
sliced. Hmm.
That's a lot of loss. I'm just thinking through all the different losses that you've experienced. And now is this loss of getting up and having your body to be able to go places and do things as they're trying to figure out what has happened, right? That's just
Exactly.
tremendous.
Yeah, because I was taught, you go to school, you graduate high school, you go to college, you get a good job, and then you live, the American dream, your kids, the dogs, the white picket fence. But nobody ever told me, you could work so hard to have these things and it all be taken away from you in a split of a second.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
true. Yes.
how do you handle going from super mom one day, getting everything done, down to I can't even get out of bed,
Yeah.
and my kids were at a very critical age. They were teenagers at this
Yes.
time.
Yes.
So if we raise teenagers, we all know, and so that led me in. So I
Mhm.
had to go for my disability as well. I need to add this to the picture. I couldn't work, I couldn't do anything, so I went for my disability. And as far as most people that go on disability, they're going to know that put me kind of further down that negative rabbit hole because for 2.5 years, I had to think of what I could not do.
Right.
And I had you have to, if you put it on paper, you have to live those truths, your truths. So I just went into this total mindset of I can't do that. I can't do that. My life is over. Um, and I was watching all my friends, everybody, they were advancing in their careers, they were going on vacations, and I just felt I was put in a room and left to rot.
Mm.
So the best way I could describe it, it's like putting an innocent person in jail
Mm.
and with the door wide open and saying can't leave, but you're in jail. And
So,
then, oh, go ahead.
so Sweet Pea, what was the turning point for you after 15 years in bed? I would think that the muscles would have atrophied. For me, I'm very, very sensitive to the sunlight and needing to have that. My vitamin D3 is often exceedingly low. And that's with me out in the sun, right? So I can't imagine for you, being inside for that period of time. Well, what became the catalyst or the turning point for you to be who you are today?
That's a great question. Um, so, with all the negativity, all the victimhood, all the self pity I was going through, I was downtown Denver and I had a total mental breakdown because I felt so young to be sick and I didn't what I was thinking in my head, if I'm 40 at this time, when am I going to be at 50, 60? Can I live another 40, 50 years in bed? And so I was at that crossroads of, do I live or do I die? And I didn't know how to live because, of course, I was in the bed for 15 years. I didn't know how to live, but I didn't want to die either. Um, so I literally wrote out a plan, and a good friend of mine found it.
And that plan was not to continue life. You felt like you had had enough at that point and that you were going to make some other decisions to make sure that the pain didn't continue. What happened
Correct.
after the friend who intervened found that letter and what then happened?
Okay. So because I was at my friend's house when this happened, and she called my husband without me knowing and said, get her to the hospital. So my husband acted like he was just taking me out to dinner or something, and he ended up taking me to the hospital.
Mhm,
And then from there, I I went at will. I went to the psych ward,
mhm,
and I stayed there for 6 days.
mhm,
And let me add this part. So one of my illnesses is fibromyalgia.
Oh.
And when I was diagnosed with fibro, at that time nobody believed in fibro. So
Right.
I had to go through all that.
Hmm.
And so I was on Oxycontin
Hmm.
and fentanyl patches because that's how I was going to kill myself. I was going to take all my meds and put all my patches on and then just go.
Sleep. Yeah.
And so I was never addicted to the medication, but I did become body dependent.
Hmm.
And so that caused, so when I went in the psych ward, they had to get rid of all my pain medications.
Hmm.
Uh, and then they put me on uh, something else for those withdrawals.
Right.
So I think my mind started clearing up from all the medications, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to check myself into an 8-week outpatient program.
Hmm.
And because I needed to start learning more skills, I needed to start, like you said, start filling up that mental toolbox.
Yes.
Because, if you do not have the right tool for the job, you can't do the job.
Right.
You can't change a tire without a tire iron.
Right. Yes.
So I completed all that and I was doing really great, but I didn't have a plan. What's the
Mhm.
next action? I was still sick. Even though I went to the psych ward and even though I went to the outpatient, I was still sick.
Yeah.
And so life just kind of went right back into the same patterns. I
Hmm.
went right back into that bed and watching TV.
Hmm.
Well, one day I was watching TV and I was watching Jerry Springer
Yes.
and show Mel Robbins came on. And I was like, oh, this is a new show. And I realized she was a life coach. And I'm like, oh my. I said, that's me. That I just knew it. I just knew that instant that was my purpose.
You could
So
see yourself in the future doing that, right?
absolutely.
Yes.
Because I've been kind of coaching my whole life. I was a teaching mother, and all their friends would always come to me. I am the go to person in my family. So I never thought you could take that into a professional level
Right. Yes.
until I, saw Mel Robbins. And so I just lit up and I was like, this is what I have to do. So I got on the computer and I picked a school, and August 19th, 2020 was the day I got out of bed.
I love that. And I love that you know the date. That's really your birthday, right? All this
That's right.
other stuff was the trying to figure out who you were and how to use the things that you knew or didn't know, and listening to other people and your grandmother putting these limitations. And she, I'm certain, meant well, but these,
Yeah,
taking her mindset and trying to put it on you, and it didn't fit. It's like a crown that doesn't fit, right? If we
that's
see
right.
our ideas as being our thoughts that are in our mind, and our mind is different than our physical brain, right? And so in that space of having ideas and stuff in our mind, somebody else's ideas sometimes fit beautifully and sometimes they're just not for us. And even though we try to make it work that way. And so kudos to you for coming to this point, listening to Mel Robbins, having this incredible moment of understanding that this was your path forward, and then choosing to get out of bed and knowing that birthday. I'm so proud of you.
Yes, because I knew that instant that I needed to uh, I needed to bring the help to the people that couldn't help themselves because I couldn't even help myself at this time. And so when I started school, the first day, my teacher said to come to my classes with an open mind and to trust the process. And they're like, I can't wait to see what happens after 8 months and see where everybody goes and the transformations people are going to make. And remember, I was still in that self-pity mode, that victimhood. So in my brain, I'm like, yeah, 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 we'll see, we'll see. But I did what was asked of me, and something just amazingly happened without me even realizing change was taking place. That's how easy change can be if you just put in just a little effort into yourself. But I realized I had to start taking personal responsibility
Yes.
for myself,
Mm-hmm.
and so I started to read more on my conditions, and I started to eat better,
Mm-hmm.
and I started to lightly exercise. I don't like to use the word exercise. I like to use the word, movements.
Yes. Yes.
And so I just started really just taking this journey, and I started to untangle all the traumas.
Mm-hmm.
And because if you do not feel your emotions to your traumas, all
Yeah.
you do is bury them. Guess what's going to happen? You're not going to feel it. So you go do, so people are on alcohol or they overeat. They find something to, uh, um, to mask those emotions so they don't have to feel it. But I am here to tell you the only way you are going to heal is you have to feel. You
Yes.
have to get those out, and you
Mm-hmm.
have to take personal responsibility. And that's something that I had to get through my thick head.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, a quick story. I was crying to my brother, telling him how I'm in pain and my life's over and my life sucks. And he said, what I want you to do is I want you to make a big sign and put it above your bed and put it in the bathroom, put it everywhere saying, today's not a good day, but tomorrow will be better. I
Mm-hmm.
was so upset with him.
I
I was
bet
like,
you were.
I think this is all in my head, just like the doctors and
Right?
all that. But there is truth. You heal the mind, you heal the body,
Yes.
and if you would have told me that years ago, I would not have believed you
Mm-hmm.
at all. But when you spend a lot of money to go to school and you trust that process,
Right.
it's amazing what happens. Because also, your thoughts
Mm-hmm.
dictate where your life is going to go. So if you think you're unlovable
Mm-hmm.
and you think you're broken, well, guess what? You are, that's what you're going to live
Yeah.
because what you believe will come true because you're looking for it,
Yeah.
you know? So I had to learn to change my thoughts, to
Mm-hmm.
change those beliefs.
What you were sharing is such a key elemental foundational piece of being able to change one's life. And you have come, as you have said, through victimhood and blaming other people to a life where now you take responsibility and you are looking for the good that's taking place around you and how you can make a difference in other people's lives. It's a huge amount of transformation. And this whole concept of what we think about is what we actually see. I didn't really buy into that until Darren Hardy was once talking about how after he purchased a car, a specific car, he began to see those cars everywhere, right? And up to
Hmm.
purchasing that, he really hadn't really noticed those cars around. But once we lock in on something, we begin to see the patterns of it or see it around us. And that really helped me to begin, because I had just at that point purchased a car. And so I was very aware of that experience. In this place of coming to, for me, it's about the number one step is working on being open to the possibility. So being open to the possibility that tomorrow can be a better day, or open to the possibility that the people I'm communicating with, it'll be good communication, right? We'll understand each other. We'll have that heart to heart understanding, or open to the possibility of being able to have a career or a job or money income happening so that I can vacation to a place that I want to go to. These spaces of being open to, if I'm not open to it, if I'm not open to that possibility, it's very difficult to find the way forward. And you being open to that possibility, as mad as you were at your brother, and I love that you share that you felt that so intensely, but coming to that place of saying, okay, I want tomorrow to be a better day. I'm open to that. And then beginning to see those pieces move into place. So as you are looking back over the last several decades of your life, what are the key pieces of other people coming into your life and making a difference?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, I'm not sure how to answer that question. Because really, just like my childhood,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, I never had the support, and I still don't have the support because I've just been out of bed now for 3 years. Started my business 2 years ago, and so uh, um, I'm still working on getting everything that I lost
Mm-hmm.
back, and now, uh, so I'm working on manifestation right now. I'm not, I've been learning about manifestation, but like you said, there's still that skeptic in you. And so I'm really diving deep
Mm-hmm.
into that. And once I started loving myself, and once I started really making that transformation, and I even got a vision board, and I'm working on that, my life has totally changed. I
Yes.
get people coming up to me, and they're like, "Wow, you're just glowing," and I'm making connections left and right,
Yeah.
and I'm I'm starting I've been putting boundaries down,
Mm-hmm.
and so life has really been changing in such a good way for me that I it's I can't even explain
Mm.
th- what's happening in my life now. Never happened to me before.
Wow. And it's because you have changed. What got me to this point isn't what's going to get me forward to the next point. And I've heard people say that, but I'm really noticing that in my life. And part of that then is allowing things that have worked for me, or allowing connections that have felt very safe for me, to reevaluate them and come into a place of, is this what's taking me forward into the world that I'm seeing that's happening next, right?
Right.
What piece of advice, Sweet Pea, would you give to somebody who is feeling like, or they know somebody? Let's start with the person. The piece of advice that you give to the person who is feeling like life is just hard and they aren't really sure that it's worth the effort. What advice would you give them?
My advice at first is to seek out help, because you're not, even though I'm a very strong, very motivated, very determined person, for the first time in my life, I couldn't help myself. I couldn't do it. And you have to seek out help. You
Mhm,
have to seek out a program. You
mhm.
have to seek out support,
Yes.
because us sick people, we just get tucked away in the back,
Yeah.
or if you're drowning in sorrow, nobody wants to hear it.
Mhm. Yeah.
No, but you have to get to that point where you're just so sick and tired of doing what you're doing, to go find those answers. Go see, even if the help is a psych ward, find the help
Right.
because you are not broken. You are not unlovable. You are not anything. What it is we were not taught how to handle certain emotions.
Mhm.
So we have to fill that mental toolbox
Mhm.
because without if you don't have the tool, you can't do the job,
Right. Right.
period. And so, what I do in my program is I really help try to empower individuals
Mm.
by guiding them to take their own personal control and to help them discover their unique abilities and to build their confidence,
On that.
you know,
Yes.
and to meet them where they're at. You
Mm.
know, you
Mhm.
can't be where I'm at. We
Right.
have to meet you where you're at. And because we as humans, we all want that deep connection with people. You
Right.
know, we want that safety. We want that security. We want that belonging.
Yes. Yes.
And when we don't get that, the pain becomes unbearable.
Yeah.
And then what do you do with that pain?
Right.
You push it down, you drink it away, or you eat it away, or you become angry all the time, whatever your go to is,
Yeah.
you know. And I'm going to tell you firsthand if you do not get that out of your body, you do not get that stress, that trauma,
Mhm.
it will cause chronic illness.
Yes.
Now, don't quote me on the percentage, but I think it's like 85% or something to that
Mhm.
close. Chronic illness is all manifested by stress and trauma.
Yeah.
It's
I've
only
heard
like,
numbers.
yeah,
I've
percent.
heard
Like,
numbers very, very similar to that, and it's astonishing to me because we live in a culture in America where it's about achievement, about moving forward, and we as we do that, so often it comes along with these deep packages of stress. And even if it's for a period of time, that stress is not allowing the cells to replicate in healthy ways. Desperately need that, our sleep at night. And again, I'm not a doctor. My sister's the doctor. I'm not. And so I'm
right.
speaking through, reading from other people and having other conversations. As you are thinking about this really powerful advice that you have just given to people who are in a dark place to seek help, what advice would you give to somebody who was like your friend so somebody who is seeing somebody else, be it a child, somebody in the family, a coworker, seeing somebody else really struggling, what advice would you give to that person? Because that's what really made a huge difference in your life, was somebody showing up and saying, "Hey, Sweet Pea, I care too much about you for this to be how things are and how things continue." So what advice would you give to that person?
I would advise I would advise to do the tough love.
Mm.
Tough love. It's not easy making those decisions. It's really not. She thought I was really going to be mad at her. She thought our friendship was going to be over and all that. And, we don't want to make those choices. She didn't want to put me in the psych ward, but, what else could she have done to save my life?
Mhm.
you know and I that's what I would do is don't don't ask the person, you know find the help for that person, whether they're going to fight you on that or not.
Mhm.
That's about all you can do is to get the help to them. And if they take, I mean, yeah, you lead your horse to water, you can't make them drink,
Right.
but you know it's really a touchy subject. because some people they just don't want it,
Mhm.
and that's hard um, to handle. That's hard to go through.
I think the right fit is also really critical. And so just because you have a huge university or an incredible hospital or whatever that's right there, sometimes that particular one is not what the person needs. I can think of somebody that I think that that person was in 6 different psychiatric facilities until they found somebody who could speak to them in their own language, heart language, right? English was never an issue through the whole process, but finding somebody who could understand and speak and allowed vulnerability. And so then from there comes this space of conversation and that space. But some the people that I have known who have been in psych wards, every single one of them has been incredibly intelligent. So the blase, do 1, 2, 3, and you're going to feel fine, hasn't worked for them. They've tried it. They know it's not going to, and it's a real put off. And so I really appreciate what you're saying about the part of you as the friend who's trying to help, the coworker who's uh, desperately looking for ways to have things go better at work, might be feeling like that person might be really angry at you, and they may be. But you are doing your absolute best as a human being to see another human being who's hurting, to be able to help them move forward. If you could invite absolutely anybody, you could invite anybody at all, Sweet Pea, to sit down and have a conversation with. That person can be somebody who's already transitioned, somebody who's alive today, somebody who speaks a very different language than you, somebody who is in a completely different field than you are. Who would that person be, and why did you choose that person?
That's a great question. So if I had to choose, I would choose to sit in front of maybe a panel of doctors,
Mm,
because there's such a gap between the patient and the doctor that I feel the doctors were causing more emotional damage
mhm,
than my childhood,
mhm,
because they were disregarding what I had to say.
mhm,
They were just taking my money and taking my money, and and the medical world is so corrupt
mhm,
that they don't realize that I'm a person. I'm not your paycheck. I'm a person that's hurting. I'm a person that, you know, needed that help.
mm.
They
Yeah,
see it all. I get it. They see a lot, but it's one industry that and doctors, they just shove medication down your throat,
yeah,
because we all know the pharmaceuticals just shove it. But what we need to be telling people is, how do we get rid of that stress? How do we get rid of that trauma? A
mhm,
magic pill is not going to do it. Anxiety pills may help,
mhm,
but it's just a mask, and we need to have some more mind and body,
mhm.
and I think and because that's another thing, right? A doctor will say, okay, well, you need to go lose 70 pounds because you're 70 pounds overweight. And then you leave the office. What do you do with that information?
Yeah,
You're already in your patterns, so I feel if people just, you know, yeah, it's a weird subject, because it's mind over matter, and I know
mm,
you might be going, yeah, whatever. I get it. I was there. I was there. I know. Um, but yeah, I would like to tell doctors, that you can't just throw throw pills down. We got to get to the root cause of
yes.
the illness.
You
you
had
know.
shared earlier in our conversation, Sweet Pea, about how you had begun to change your diet. Can you
Mm.
share a little bit about what that looked like before and what it looked like as you began to change? And then also, you spoke about healthy movement, adding some of that into your life and what that can look like for people.
Okay, so wonderful. So what I did was when I was just put away in my room and left to rot, I was being fed fast food
Hmm.
because my husband wasn't cooking or nothing. So I was eating like fast food for 15 years. And I ended up getting to close to 200 pounds.
Hmm.
And so when I was starting to go into the health coaching, I started learning about nutrition, and
Yes.
I started learning about what sugar and all that can do to you. So then I started looking at diets and all that, and I'm just, um, I'm not a diet person
Hmm.
because I don't want to be restricted from what I want. So
Sure.
what I did was I substitute sugar with fruit.
Mm.
So I was like, every time I wanted sugar, I would just eat a piece of fruit, which gave me that sugar. And then I just stepped away from processed food. So I kind of stayed on the outside aisles of the grocery store.
And that's exactly where you have to shop if you're looking for less processed foods. Most grocery stores, yes.
And so I ended up losing 75 pounds just just by just by changing the sugar and also cutting my portions
Mm.
because I know you can't tell, but I'm only 4'10", so I'm just a little person.
You are, I had no idea.
Yeah, and I was eating like a grown adult would eat, like a
Mm.
5'8" person would eat.
Sure.
And so I said, I got a body of a 10-year-old, so I should be eating like a 10-year-old.
Mm.
So I cut my portions, I cut the sugars, and it just dropped off. It
Wow.
just dropped off. And so, what I would say for people that had fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue, so what I did is I started going to the pool,
Yes.
because it wouldn't hurt.
Right.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And yoga. Yoga is really important.
Yes. That
Mhm.
ability to stretch the body, to allow all of the muscles the opportunity to stretch one way and then the other, doing, I think it's such an important piece. So, and my caveat about yoga is don't do it just for 3 months. It was at the about 3 year point that I began to notice that my body was really responding to it. And I was doing it 3 times a week. I was really serious about it. But it took that length of time, and partly because of the job that I had prior and how I was moving or not moving so much in that one, for my body to kind of begin to feel like things were going to start moving in the right direction. And I really appreciate you talking about the pool. I have someone in my life who, every time they come to visit, they're in the pool at least once, if not twice. And the pool is a maybe about 5 mile drive from our place, but it's heated
Mhm.
year round. And unless there's a lightning storm, you can get in it and enjoy it. It's inside. But that whole idea of just allowing the water to lift you and carry you and to be able to stretch and do all the different things inside of that, I think is really important. And if the person is experiencing eczema, if it's possible to get into a pool that uses salt water to clean rather than chemicals, rather than the chlorine, that can be super helpful on the skin and the hair as well. But yes, getting into the water can be such a remarkably beautiful piece of things to do. As we
Yeah.
are kind of finishing up our conversation here, are there things that you'd like to reiterate, tools for people to be able to use, things that they can do right here, right now, as they are looking at recovering for themselves or to share with somebody else?
So So, as people know, so what I do is I work with people with loss in general, because as we know, when we lose something, a person or an object,
Mhm.
that pain becomes so unbearable, and you feel so numb, and you feel so lost. So what I do is I start off with 6 questions, and I will go through those real quick with you. Hopefully, they can replay to get the questions. But the first question I ask anybody is, what emotion did losing this person or thing bring up for you? We have to get to the bottom of what those emotions are, because again, if you can't feel it, you're not going to heal it. And then I would another great question to be asked is, what was that person or object giving to you that you're not giving yourself? Because we have to start giving ourselves. We cannot depend on the outside world to fulfill. You know. Also, what was a person or thing? I'm sorry. How does your life seem different now compared to before the loss? Because a lot of people think that they can't move on anymore because this person or thing was their life. You know, and also, what would you say to that thing that you lost? You know, and so you know. I'm sorry, I'm kind of lost here in the
You're
moment.
doing great. You're feeling it as you are sharing it. I can sense that. You're doing great.
Yes, so so what I like to do is I like to create a safe, non-judgmental space for people so they can be vulnerable, so
Yeah.
they can feel those feelings and those thoughts and work through their belief system, because it's so important that you change, because we believe things as you grow older and older, right? So if you keep getting, let's say your boyfriends or girlfriends keep cheating on you, well, your belief system means you're unlovable. But is that true?
Right.
So some of our beliefs are just not true, and we have to go through what those beliefs are, so you can take out the untruth, if that
Mhm.
makes
It does. Sweet Pea, I have so appreciated our conversation, our time together. I so appreciate that you have chosen life, that you
sense.
see the recovery on the other side. And I love the prefix re because it means again. And it's not that we just step over a line and say, okay, I'm on the other side and everything is perfect and fine. The recovery can mean that we are working through things again and again, and that certain conversations can spiral through our life and keep showing up. And each time that we get that opportunity to have that conversation again about loss or what that looks like, we get to ask if it's valid. So, like just like what you were saying, if somebody has a low self-esteem or believes that they're unlovable, is that really true? So each time this conversation comes up, we get the opportunity to be open to the possibility of seeing it differently or having a different answer or feeling differently about that. And you have paved that way so well for us today. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome. I like just to leave this,
Yes.
and it's the quote that I live by. Whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're going to be right either way.
Yes.
Which one do you want?
Yes. Oh, so powerful. Thank you, Sweet Pea. And to our audience, we're just so grateful that you invest in yourself, that you listen all the way through to the very end. And we have a special thing that we're encouraging you to implement in your life.